Alright, so now that we've got most of the animations working on the new character, because we've retargeted to a completely different skeleton, you're probably going to run into some issues, and you're going to need to do a couple of extra steps to get everything to work as it should. So the first and most noticeable, these turning in place animations, you can see they're triggering, but they're not actually rotating the character. So with the locomotion system, turning in place is handled through a notify state, or an animation notify state, and what it does is it gets the position of a montage and uses that to find a curve value from a set curve and then add that rotation to the character. And I'll show you when we retarget to those new animations. Let's see. Find a turn in place animation. We can click on that animation notify state within that animation, and we see there's some settings here. So that montage variable, it's still referencing the mannequin version. So we're going to need, for all of these turn in place animations, to change this variable on each animation notify state to use the night version of that animation. So this is cturn L90, and if we find night, we can find cturn L90 and just do that for every single turn in place animation. Alright, so if we save everything, we should see now that the character is actually turning properly. So that's really good. Alright, so one other thing that happens when you retarget that's going to cause some problems later down the line. And if you open up the Anim slot manager, if you look on these turn in place montages, right now it's set to default group turn in place slot. Now if I go to the mannequin version of those same ones, you can see that it's in a different group, this group called not moving turn in place slot. And when we retarget, the animation groups, or I mean the slot groups, did not get updated or added to the night skeleton. So that's something we're actually going to manually need to do. And if you don't, the turn in place still works, but it plays on the wrong slot, which could cause some issues. So what we can do is we can add a group here, not moving. And if we type it in correctly, we should be good. Add another one, grounded. And all I'm doing is matching it up to, let's see, the mannequin version of those slots. So you see not moving, turn in place slot, grounded, additive land slot. So I can do the turn in place slot. I can set that to the not moving group. And then the additive land slot, set that to the grounded. And that should, let's see, that should properly update that group there. So everything's going to work the same way, but it's now going to be playing on the right slot within the animation blueprint. So another thing that you might notice is the stopping transitions look a little funny. They should be, they just don't look as they would on the mannequin character. And so for each locomotion animation, I have two curves which drive, so if I open up this 45-degree, which drive basically, or map out the position of the foot within the cycle. So I have foot position, and then this one should be foot direction. But after retargeting, it was changed to blend orient 1. And so for every animation you see it's blend orient 1. And so within the animation blueprint, it doesn't know which curve to get. So what you could do is you can go in there and you can rename each curve, or you could recreate the curves to match what they look like on the mannequin. And I'll just pull up a mannequin animation real quick. So you see this says foot direction and foot position, and the night just says blend orient. But another thing you could do is if you open up the Anim's curve window here, you can actually rename this, And so you can delete this one, this foot direction curve, hit yes, and then just rename blend orient to foot direction, hit yes, and then it'll rename all of those curves. And that's just a really fast way to do that. So now if I play test, you can see that the transitions are working properly now, which is good. So the last thing that you're probably going to notice is the physics asset. Most likely on your character, it might become detached, something like this. And this is because the physics asset isn't set up properly to work with the way the physics works with the system. So if I were to open up the physics asset here and compare it to the mannequin physics asset, see in here, you'll see that the mannequin physics asset has a body on the root bone, and the knight does not. And what that does is that keeps the mesh, or the physics asset really, attached to the capsule, so you don't have to reattach it after you're done simulating physics. So if I were to simulate here, I see that this stays planted, the root does, and everything above the pelvis, or everything, the pelvis and below, it simulates, but then this would stay planted on the capsule. And if I were to simulate physics here, you can see that the root bone is moving all over the place, and that's what's causing the character to detach when you get out of Ragdoll. So we can fix that really easily if we click on the root bone here and just add a body. It doesn't matter if it's a box or a sphere, something like that, to the root. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. And then what you can do is you can disable collision by turning off collision response right there. And then if you just change that default physics type to kinematic, you can see, well, you see right now that that's staying fixed in place, but the pelvis is kind of locked in the air. And so what we need to do now is, because we created this body on the root, is also to free up the linear constraints on the pelvis. So if we click on the root constraint on the pelvis, so the constraint that these two joins together, go to the linear limits, change all those to free, now we see it's behaving correctly and the root's staying fixed there. So now if we go and we test that out, we can see that the character stays attached, which is really great. One other thing you'll notice is, now I know this physics asset is kind of weird, it's not set up that well, but if you pay attention, the rotation of the character actually gets flipped around to face the kind of backwards, so the character gets turned around. So if I were to go into Ragdoll, and that's because with the new skeleton, the joint orientations are different. So I could show you how to add some logic within the base character to kind of compensate for that. So if I were to open this up, and there's two places we'll need to work. If I were to go into Ragdoll system here, right here, it chooses it plays a get up animation, and then it compares it gets the rotation of that socket to determine whether or not the character is facing down, and that'll determine which animation to play, from the back or from the front, something like that. But because the joint orientation is different, this, instead of greater than 0, we actually need this to be check if it's less than 0. And so, really easy way to do this is to add another select node, like that. And then if we create a new variable, promote that to a variable, down here name that something to like pelvis flipped, or something like that. Compile that, and default value should be off, and then we just plug that in there. And then we also need to use the same logic in another place. If I were to open up the go to functions, Ragdoll system, calculate actor location and rotation in Ragdoll, you see here that this will point the capsule in the direction of the pelvis, and because just, like I mentioned, the joint orientation is different, we also need to add some logic in here to compensate for that. So I'm going to do kind of the same thing I did there. Add that logic in. Let's see. Like so. And compile and save. And now what I could do is I can open up this night character. And if I were to go, I can go to the full blueprint editor, find the ragdoll system section. Actually, hold on. If we take this new boolean that we made and we put that into that section just to keep it organized, go back to the night character. We should see it right here, and if we select that to true just on the night character, then it will work correctly. See, now the capsule is faced in the correct orientation. It doesn't rotate around. And so, using a base character allows you to share logic between different characters with different settings, through this, which just makes things really, really easy. So yeah, that should, I think those are the main issues that arise during retargeting, and hopefully that can, show you how to take care of those. Yeah, hopefully that helps some of you guys out.